Just me. It's just me right now.
Just you?
Just me.
Just Mike. So, got to notify people that we're here and that we want to help them with their jiu-jitsu. So,
Anyone yet? No?
wow, nobody loved this. All right.
They heard I was here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Once you told them I was around, they stopped showing
Guys,
up.
you missed the flying triangles.
Oh, we got one.
What, we got one? Okay. Now it'll start to go on.
It's Riel.
Who is it?
It's Riel.
Riel. Did you try that cherry chip ice cream, Mike? The Rebel ice
I
cream?
did try that cherry chip. It
You
was
did try
pretty.
it?
I did try it. It was pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It was pretty good.
It's a
I'm
nice
not-
change. It's not
I'm
super.
not a fruity guy myself.
It wasn't overly fruity, which
No.
was good.
It had kind of that maraschino cherry.
Riel says
flavor.
hi.
Hey, Riel, we're talking about Rebel ice cream.
Now we
The
got
new-
Guy, too.
The new cherry chip.
That's right.
Cherry chip.
All right, guys. So hey, we're trying to do this class. It's kind of an all levels class. We understand not everybody even has somebody to train with, but I want to kind of explain conceptual stuff. So one of the big things that you can do when you're not training is train your mind, obviously, whether that sounds dumb or not. Jiu-jitsu is very much a mental art. I think sometimes we allow the physical aspects of it to take over a lot, but the mental aspects are really what make jiu-jitsu powerful. Like the people that are very intelligent when it comes to jiu-jitsu make better decisions, and then their body tends to last longer as well. So that's good too. So we're going to start. We're doing guard opening to start. We're going to do some passing today. We're going to kind of look at two real distinct ideas about the hip staple pass, because it's a pass that we use a lot and we learn in fundamentals. Just some ways to open the guard and to use that pass, especially when there's such a distinct size difference between the two of us, so we can show some options. So some of you guys have probably seen this stuff before, but it's just kind of a good reminder that there's multiple ways to do every technique. So I think what we'll do is start out kind of the normal way you can open the guard, and then we can talk about the frustration she would have maybe using this pass and someone like myself if she was trying to get head control. First, going to start with
Do you want to do that?
the guard opening. What's that? Do you want me to do the standing one first?
Yeah. If you want to do that. I'll show the other one because that's the one that I use.
Yeah, okay, so I'll actually start. And so we're going to start with a couple ideas. First off is going to be just how we open the guard from here. So I'm going to be in this position, actually going to put my toes on the mat, right? A lot of times when I start out control biceps, it's the first place I can go without having to untuck the gi. But eventually my goal is actually going to be to utilize the gi. Now some people will pass this way and you can do this, especially in no gi. But I find if I have the gi on, it's much easier to use the gi. I can also force them a lot of times when I open up the gi to make them walk up to the high guard, which is going to make this guard opening easier. Now I can do it either way, but it's always nicer. So I'm going to take and I'm going to open one, okay? And I'm going to try to make sure I have a grip where I can put, like I always call this Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Actually, if Riel's on, thanks, I still have my Rock'em Sock'em Robot toys. She brought me some little mini Rock'em Sock'em Robot toys because I always make this joke. But if you ever watched or have seen the Rock'em Sock'em Robots, they kind of punched like this. But it's a good reminder, I'm going to open up and I'm going to punch the armpits like we're Rock'em Sock'em Robots. So I usually open up one and then try to open up the other, okay? If I'm too low down, okay, she can still reach up and sit up because I can't hold the shoulders down as well and get to the collar and break my posture down. If I'm too high up, a lot of times it makes it easier to go underneath. So the idea here is going to be to open up, be right here, and then Rock'em Sock'em Robot. So I keep my elbows down. If she tries to reach my collar here, it's very difficult. Even if she has a grip on the collar, a lot of times this is where I can do that little punch, the Rock'em Sock'em punch, kind of punch, punch, punch like that, and push into the armpit and break that grip. It's very difficult. And now what I'll do is actually start to walk my body back. Now I keep my elbows down. I want to make sure I don't cross my arm over the top. This would be a really easy arm bar for them, right? But down here it's very hard for them to submit me because my elbows are beside the waist. They're not over the waist. And so a lot of times here they're going to try to walk the guard up because she's actually someone with shorter legs. She's going to start to lose her guard, right? If I stay here, go ahead and walk them back down a little bit. She locks them and I kind of start doing this and they come apart. Okay? So a lot of times here they'll walk their guard up. When that happens, I can stand up. I find the middle, right? So I'm going to step my leg in the middle. If you notice, my left leg is flat. And now I sit down. And a lot of times my knee will come through the middle here. Okay? I'm going to keep the control of the elbows. I keep my elbows pinned in. I bring my knee to the inside. I'm going to start to push my knee across. And I step up my right foot here. and now I'm going to go to head control. Okay. So that's going to be the first part. So again, the rock'em sock'em robots, arms. So if I'm here, okay, biceps a lot of times first. Just because you know what, if you're messing around with the collar here, they're going to make sleeve grips. They're going to make collar grips. They're going to start pulling you down. So sometimes this is a really just good starting point for control. Now I kind of move away from this side to open up the gi, and I punch in the arm, and now I do the same thing on the other side. 1 and 2, making sure really that my fists are right in the armpits. Again, my hands are up and over. It's going to be too easy for her to move. And they're not too low where I can't really control her shoulders. Right here, okay? Scoot my hips back. She walks the guard high. I can step up or pop up, okay? Knee to the middle. Slide down. Start to bring the knee across until I staple. I staple with my knee real close. If I come out, guys, there's a lot of leverage there, right? If I keep my knee close, it's very hard for her to dig in there. And I step my right leg up. Okay, and I do that so that she can't lock her legs. Makes it very good. And if she does, I can lean in. Right here, it may not seem like much, but you're almost basically forcing this person into the splits. You know, you're pushing your hips this way to keep it across. Okay, from there, I'm going to look to make my head control. Okay, and if I need to, I can even come underneath and help lift the shoulder and then close the elbow. So I can make a good grip here and close my elbow. Now for the pass, I always keep my head down. If you lift your head up or keep your chest away here, a lot of times people are going to manipulate your head. So I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to come behind to control the legs. Some people will grip here. I prefer to come inside. I step back, okay? My toes are loaded here. I'm driving, all my weight is actually going to be going right into the neck here. So I kind of load this so I can go up and forward, back step. And now I replace this hand. If I don't use this arm and I start to do this, right, a lot of times we're going to fight another fight because their leg's going to come in, right? So one of the big things that I like to do here, okay, controlling the leg, pass and establish, drop that hand inside, okay? And now use my toes to move into position, okay? And then I've got a solid crossbody established. I'm blocking guard recovery on this side. I have head control. So once more, all the way through now, we'll get the whole thing. And then we'll talk about what happens, because you can imagine now, we're going to switch roles, that against a taller person, maintaining that head control and that pressure can be a little bit awkward. So that's what we're going to do, is have her. So again, I'm here, biceps first, open the collar, 1, 2, start to scoot back. See if I can encourage them to walk the guard high. I don't need them to walk the guard high to use the knee through the middle open, but it definitely makes it easier, okay? Especially with some of the little shorter legs. Knee through, turn the hips. I turn my weight. Look, my head goes over here. Weight down, leg posted. Never left my toes. Head control, okay. Make my grip, close my elbow, block the leg. Weight comes, so now my weight's going to come forward, back step and walk, block the guard recovery. Okay, and then come into crossbody. Make sense? Okay. So that's technique number 1. Now that's one way to open the guard and to utilize the hip staple. Now we're going to look at a totally different situation. That's going to be her on top. So right away she's going to struggle with a couple of things. Now that knee through the middle will still work. She's going to show a different variation. And I would actually say, because we talk about it a lot of times, that again, someone with taller, longer legs, okay, it's going to be very hard to pass around those legs. And so a hip staple and some of these passes where you're coming through the middle, you're coming over the hips, or I would say stacking is probably the other one that's going to benefit you. Things like Toriano, it's not that it's impossible, but some of those passes, the Torianos and the leg drags and stuff against people that are a lot taller, longer legs than you can be really frustrating. So it is important, and we all fight that fight. Sometimes they're like, oh, she's a shorter person. Man, I fight taller people than me. And so I have to know, too, that, oh, man, against this guy, I might not be able to get his guard open a certain way, so I need another option. I start to kind of build that encyclopedia in my head of, okay, I'm going to fight a taller person. This is the way I'm going to have to open their guard. Because traditionally, the way I might do it against a shorter person isn't going to work the same way. She's going to go ahead and start. Now, she can pass doing the standing one like we did, but she's going to show another variation where she stays on the ground. So I'm going to let her talk you through that one.
So the thing about trying to open the guard standing like Mark did, if I do the same thing he did, whether I'm controlling biceps or armpits, I'm so stretched out already. Like I'm really leaning forward, that I feel like I don't have good base, I don't have the same control, and he's got much better leverage, you know, to move me around because I am so spread out. And I think being a shorter person and training, you know, for so many years with men, most of whom were taller than me, my style of jiu-jitsu just kind of naturally evolved to be much more, you know, passing, playing the hips than ever wanting to be at the end of people's feet, because at the end of people's legs, you're always going to fight that game of I have to get around their legs, and when you're a shorter person, that can be a battle. So I've just naturally evolved to have a style that's much more about playing on the hips and passing on the hips versus passing, you know, either at the end of the legs or passing with head control, because even head control puts me sometimes so stretched out, and I'll show you in the past what happens if I try to switch to the way Mark just did it, passing with head control. So another variation of that same concept of coming to that, what we call the combat position he was in with the one knee up and one shin on the ground. So another variation to get to that position, some people will grab belt. Personally, I prefer to grab right inside the pants because I think it gives me a little bit better pressure. The belt moves if people try to pull on your arms and break your posture down, whereas the pants don't move so much, so just fingers to the inside of the pants, elbows in, so that even if he's trying to break my posture down, this is a solid frame for me. Versus, you know, being up here where it's very easy, or even sometimes this position can be hard to control your posture. So hands inside the front of the pants, elbows in, pressure down. I'm going to bring one knee forward, so my right knee is coming right to his tailbone. And then keeping my elbows in, my left leg slides back, and I'm just stretching to the point where his leg's open. From there, I'm using this left elbow to keep that thigh pinned down, and I'm bringing this knee forward, right into this position. The same position Mark was coming to with the hip staple. But I'm going to stay here on the hips, because if I go to head control like he did, I already feel like I'm off balance. It's hard for me to get good pressure on his head, and if I start to come too far forward, I'm lifting my pressure so much on his hips that he can move me, he can make butterfly hooks. It's not a stable position for me. So keeping the same position, knee in, hip staple, I'm going to hug his hips. And the big thing I'm trying to do here is keep his hips pinned down. So I don't want to let him get onto his side. I want to keep the pressure down and hold here. If he's trying to lock his legs together, I can walk this foot forward and break that. From here, keeping my pressure down, head down, I'm going to bring my right leg back. And as my left foot comes off, my right knee will come in to keep him from getting a guard back. So right away, right knee comes in to block him recovering the guard. And I hold here, hugging the hips, keeping him flat.
One thing that we always point out when she does that technique is that that's a pass. So I think sometimes people confuse crossbody with passing the guard, and it's two different things. And if you want to get into the competitiveness or understand the points, passing the guard is when she clears my legs and controls, or what they use the term establish the position. So here she's established in the crossbody. It's just because she doesn't have the head control doesn't mean that she hasn't passed. Once she's past the legs and she's controlling my hips, if I'm fighting like this, the ref is going to understand she passed the guard, they're counting, and they're going to score. And the reason that's important is one of the mistakes that somebody who's maybe a little smaller can make is they pass and they're trying to right away get up to head control. And that movement, again, just because of your stature versus somebody that's maybe a little bit taller, you create an opening for that scramble. Now, if she passes and the ref starts counting and it's 1,000 and all of a sudden she goes for head control and I turtle or I get a leg back in, she doesn't get her pass. And so one of the real important, again, just that kind of mental mindset is to always kind of have a clock in your head. And now if you're lucky, you have somebody that's coaching you when you're competing and they can yell and hopefully you can hear them and they say, yes, stick it, stick your points or stick your position. Yes, okay, you got your points, and you kind of know. And it's important to begin to understand what that terminology and instruction is. Because when she goes to pass her, she can easily make the mistake of moving too fast or trying to get too much too quick, right? If you're a competitor, points are points. Okay, I know we want to submit somebody, but 3 seconds, she scores her 3 points. Even if I get my guard back, she's up 3 points, and I have a different fight that I have to fight. Okay, but once you're up on points on somebody, their mentality has to change too, because they are losing. You know, and that is the power of kind of the point game. So go ahead, let's do it again.
So again, gripping the belt, elbows in, or if you want the front of the pants, elbows in.
You guys know what a grundy is? Let's get mature about it. That's what she's trying to do, is basically shove my pants up into my crotch, right? But she's pushing this way, and your pants only go so far up, so it's a good grip to have here. She creates a lot of pressure on my hips without having to do too much, right? And again, she's able to stay really far back.
And for people that feel like their posture is getting broken down all the time, which I know, some of the smaller people that train jiu-jitsu, it's one of the battles that they have against bigger people. You feel like you're fighting that fight of posture being broken down. And with this grip, as soon as he sits up to even try to break my posture down, like my fingers are kind of going into his belly. It's not very comfortable. The more he sits up, the more uncomfortable that is on his diaphragm. So it's one way to also shut down feeling like you're constantly getting your posture broken down, or your arms are fatiguing, shoulders are fatiguing. This is a nice stable frame.
That's a good point too. She's keeping her elbows in very tight here. The cool thing about this, and you may not see it from here, she's making the grip and she's pushing back, and it's like, even as I'm sitting up here, this is about as much as I can sit up unless I choose to open. Don't forget what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get the guard open. So if I open the guard, I open the guard. So if I open the guard right here to do something, it's like she can immediately start to open and pass. Don't lose focus on what you're doing because of what your opponent's doing. That's one of the things a lot of times, I think when we start, we tend to fight sometimes defensively. It's like you start opening the guard, but then I do something, and you're so concerned about what I'm doing that you kind of forget about what it is you should be doing. We have to multitask, right? Of course you have to defend what I'm doing. If I have you in a choke, you have to defend the choke. But if I just start to go here and make some grips and I'm pulling on you, that's fine. But if you can get my guard open, that's what you wanted to do. So now start to continue what you wanted to do, and all of a sudden you'll notice that I have to change what I'm going to do, right? I can't continue to attack you because now I don't have a guard anymore. So she's putting a lot of pressure on in this position. It's very hard for me to maintain my close guard.
So again, solid grip, solid frame. Right knee comes into the tailbone. I start sliding that left leg back to the point where his guard opens. And then I'm bringing that knee forward to that combat position. Across, walking this foot up, hugging the hips. And again, I have to wait for my moment. If he's struggling, if he's trying to get to his side, it's not the time. I'm waiting till I feel like I've got him flat enough. I'm leaning my weight forward, and then when he calms down, my pressure feels right. I'm gonna bring that right leg back, keep my pressure down, keeping him flat, and it's this right knee that's gonna come in once I take the left hook off to block the re-guard. Holding my position, squeezing him tight, and getting my 3 points.
We got a question.
Yep.
When do you change your grip during the transition to pass?
The grip from inside the pants to the...
I believe so.
Once I get my shin across, once I get to this position, then I'm better off, getting a different grip to try to flatten his hips. Because here is going to have my own arm trapped in. Mm-hmm. Here, grabbing pants or grabbing belt, I'm trying to kind of hug him to me. So once I get the shin...
In no-gi, a lot of times we will hug because you don't have a grip. You just wrap your hands as deep as you can. Even if she can almost here, I'll be on my side. She can almost touch her hands. Yeah, that puts so much pressure. It's like a reverse Heimlich maneuver. It's like she's trying to crack my back almost, So she starts hugging and putting in the weight. And that's acceptable in gi as well, but in no-gi, you don't have the option. You have to grab that.
Yeah, and gi, sometimes you naturally end up there. You realize your hands are almost touching, and that's fine too. But if I keep that grip in the front of the pants, then it doesn't give me that same ability to hug his hips anymore, so I want to transition. Once I bring that shin across, transition the hands.
Okay, I think
So one last thing here, let's address the move up to the crossbody. Because from this one, like we talked about, So get to this position here. And now a lot of times, you're gonna look, I have two options from here. She's not controlling my head. So turtling out may be an option, right? I may be able to like push and start to turtle, and then she can start to move towards the seatbelt. So that is an option as well, right? And definitely, you know, the more advanced you are, the more you start to look for the control of that. And if my arm is up here, she may be able to come underneath in a horse collar, right? So that's a good, and now she has a little better control of that. She can also really pull that and pull me back to the ground here. And you can keep that position. So if she makes that grip here, right? And now she comes underneath and starts to make the other grip here, she can use that and the head control. She can put her head under my chin. She can even come and try to get the horse collar on the far side and move up to mount, right? Use her head, right? Go here, now slide up to mount, right? So that's a real common kind of, I don't even want to say old school, it's been around a while, but it's still, that's about as legit as it comes for trying to get to mount from there. So she can get those grips. One of the other things that I have a lot of times, and this would be probably the preferred idea, most people, they'll turtle if they don't know what else to do, but first and foremost, they're going to try to maybe create position and shrimp. So I'm going to try to get on my side and push, right, to maybe recover the guard, to bridge, escape my hips, and recover the guard. And in that scenario, when I start to push here, a lot of times it's really easy to look through the frame, right? See how she just swims her hand up over the top of my bicep, and then you can shoot through, and this hand kind of slides off, and now you have it. And if you move quickly, you get open elbow as well. So now you have open elbow position again, can advance to mount, or move on to the more advanced techniques, the step over arm locks and triangles and things like that, because the arm is trapped. So there's a lot of variations on that. One of the things I show sometimes, because I'll use if I can borrow you, the open she's doing on the bottom. Sometimes for taller people, what you're going to notice is, and you'll see it, is people will go here and they'll put a knee in the middle and they'll actually step that leg out. And I can pressure that way too, and now I can bring my knee back inside. There's a lot of variations of the footwork. Base and balance is your responsibility when you're on top. We talk about that a lot, but when you're in someone's guard, you have kind of two big concepts. Obviously, defense is a big one, right? Don't get submitted. You don't want to get swept. Those are your two things that you want to avoid before you can think about passing the guard. So you have to establish basic grips that stop most of their attacks, but base and balance is super important. You know, getting swept from that position. A lot of times, that's when I'm going to try to sweep you. Is when if we're in a closed guard and you have a good frame and I can't move and you can't move, I can try to play some basic stuff, break your posture down. But as soon as you try to open my guard, that's when you're going to find that you might be off balance. That's when I'm going to look to sweep if I'm on the bottom. And so you have to make sure that you maintain that base and balance. And that's kind of rule number one there. You know, as you go to open the guard, you shouldn't be so off balance trying to do something that I can just knock you over. And so you really want to think as you start to, you know, accelerate your jiu-jitsu to build that base and balance in those positions and make sure you're stable. So, any more questions? Are we good there? No, that's good.
One other idea, I sometimes see people kind of blur the two concepts together instead of understanding that there are two distinct ways of passing. One is passing controlling with shoulder pressure, and one is passing with controlling the hips. And I sometimes see people do, you know, the variation that you showed, but then they try to do the finish that I showed.
Right.
And by doing that, they lift that head pressure to try to bring the leg around and bring their legs off that way, but then because they lifted the shoulder pressure, the person can shrimp and make space because they gave up head pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, you understand the concepts there. Like she's saying, if you didn't catch it, you're passing at the head or you're passing at the hips. It's kind of two distinct different things. And size does make a difference. Your opponent's size makes a difference. Gi or no gi makes a difference. I pass at the hips way more in no gi. And I'll pass at the head a lot in gi. I like passing the hips as well, but I pass at the head more in gi because I am longer and because I can get the grip and I have good shoulder pressure and I'm able to do that. But again, against a taller person, I may not be able to establish that. And so for that, I'm going to have to pass at the hips more. So I have to understand both concepts, that I can pass at the head or I can pass at the hips. That there's two basically points of, let's call it pressure, because that's really what it is. I'm either pressuring the head or I'm pressuring the hips. It's hard to do both, and a lot of times you're kind of forced into one or the other. And that's the other thing, is the fight may dictate that you have to do one or the other. So it is important to understand both concepts. Some of that's long-term thinking. You're not going to know. Mat time is key, right? The more you get on the mat and you try to pass a certain way, and if it's failing, that's always the questions we as instructors like, is if you can come to us and you're like, this isn't working for me, and then I'm like, okay, show me. And you're doing it conceptually right, but maybe just at the wrong time, or you're using the wrong technique. A lot of times you have really good technique, but it's just not the right time to use it. You might have like a perfect Toriano pass, but you're trying it at the wrong time. So your footwork is great, your grips are great, everything is great, but you're trying it at the wrong time. And that sometimes, those are easy things to fix. I love those questions as instructors. I love when somebody comes to me and they're like, okay, for this technique, and I watch them and they're mechanically doing things really correct. Or they're making one basic mistake in a position where that's always where the person capitalizes, and it's so easy for us to fix. Versus sometimes people are like, oh, I can't pass guard. I'm like, how are you trying to pass? Like, well, I don't know. Okay, we gotta start somewhere, and I understand in the beginning that's kind of what it is. When you train with much more advanced people too, they throw all these modified guards at you and things. It just makes it more difficult. But try to train with people that you kind of have a similarity to in a game, and you can kind of understand what they're doing better. That's the other thing too. I think sometimes people are like, oh, I want to train with a black belt, and that's great. It's not bad, but if they're throwing X guard at you and you just can't even pass close guard yet, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a waste of your time, but it's one of those things where you might get super frustrated because their technique is just beyond where you're at, and the speed at which they fight is so much different too. Hopefully they'll slow it down for you. I know I like to slow down and kind of try to play to people's level a little bit more, but not everybody. Some people really like winning, so never know. What else? Nothing else?
We have a request. Can you say Rock'em Sock'em Robots a couple more times?
Was that real?
That was Ann.
That was Ann. What's funny about Rock'em Sock'em Robots? I don't know. Have you ever seen them? They're awesome. Riel bought me these little handheld toys. I still have them in the package. I'm not going to take them out. Maybe they'll be worth something someday. I have them on my desk.
Some of these people are probably too.
Or I used Frank the Tank. For anybody that's a fan of old school, I was like, we're going to Frank the Tank them, right? Nobody knew that. I did that in class and nobody laughed. I looked at them and everybody was like 20. And I'm like, I'm old. Because I realized that movie is like super old.
20 years old.
Yeah, I was like, man, it was like some of these people weren't even born when this movie came out. And it's like, I don't even know if we're going to go to, I don't know if we'll have enough time. We're going to go to Home Depot, maybe Bed Bath & Beyond. Feeling old these days, guys. So
No questions yet.
my references are lost on them. I like it when some of the elderly folk are in. These people in
Let's
their
not say elderly, because
30s, 40s, I know, you know what I mean.
Well, let's choose our words. There's a reason why it's masters.
Yes. People in the
Masters
Masters
worlds and
division
not
will
elderly.
understand my humor.
Back when it was Master 1, Master 2, Senior 1, Senior 2.
Yeah, used for those people that don't know, there was a time not all that
That
long
one was
ago.
just Masters.
It was Master 1.
Just Masters. And then that was to 36, and then Senior 1.
Yeah. It was Masters, and then it was Senior 1, Senior 2, Senior 3. So pretty
And
much.
I'm going to be real about it. They changed it when they added more than one women's Masters division, because it was still women's Masters. But I don't think any one of them wanted to say a woman's senior.
I'm in Senior 4.
Yeah, the Senior 4 women's. They were like, we better change this right now.
Or no
Otherwise,
one's
we're
gonna
going to
do
get
our
smacked. Yeah,
tournaments.
or we're going
Yeah.
to get smacked by some lady who's like 37 and you're calling her a senior, you know?
Well, who's going to sign up for a tournament where you have to be, oh, yeah, I'm
No,
Senior 2.
I think it was the politically
It was a
correct
good marketing
move.
move by
Yes.
the BJF. Good marketing move.
That used to be the Masters and Seniors tournament they had down in Brazil. It's called Masters and Seniors. Now it's Master Worlds. They changed everything to Masters, which is better. I'd prefer to be a master than a senior myself. So as my hair gets a little more gray. So
What's crazy is that, like next year Mike will be Master 1.
you're gonna be a master.
That's why I get your references still. We got a question. When passing at the hips, I feel like my hips get too high and I lose my base. What tips do you have to stay low when passing?
I guess you got to expand on that a little bit, only because what was it?
Moose baloney.
So when you're passing in that situation, the problem can be a couple of things. You might actually be too low too. You might be too. Everybody's going to be different. If I'm passing at the hips, I actually am butt up a little bit higher to try to drive my weight down over the waist. So back to what she said, when she's here, and this is again, you just kind of got to find it, but what you need to think of first and foremost, so if you're shooting from, maybe shoot from head this way.
Okay.
So that her shoulders here, she's trying to drive me flat. But if at her height, she might be able to stay, because she's a little bit shorter, she might be able to stay a little bit more compact. So go ahead and pass this direction, and maybe we'll switch, and I'll kind of do it like this. She's keeping her base, toes always on the mat. She's staying low and very tight. But one thing that I'll tell you, if I'm doing that same technique to her, so that I get here and I pass, so I'm getting my knee across, I'm getting my hip grips in here, that if I tried to stay this low here, that I couldn't control, because you notice she's on her side. For someone that's a little bit taller, my butt need to come up a little bit more maybe. It's almost the same as the way we do over-under or those other things. And again, that kind of goes back to that base and balance. I wish there was a real clear-cut answer for that. I would say keep your toes on the mat, keep your knees off the mat. But hip position becomes super important. So watch, when I do that, if I were doing that more the way that I would do it from here, so if I'm utilizing this pass, I'm going to get up like this. So like my butt's up actually a little bit higher. My left arm down here now, I go to pass, right? It's still blocking that, so I can bring that knee in. But my butt is up higher. Like, I don't look the same as her, I'm assuming. I'd have to look at it on camera for sure. But my butt is up higher. It's the same when I do over-under pass. She stays real low and she's super tight. I get up with my butt and my head down.
Well, we both find pressure in the positions that we control the hips in. So when he did it to me, that shoulder pressure here is awful. And I'm sure when I do it to him, he feels that same thing, that my shoulder pressure, into his belly is really uncomfortable, but our bodies look different. So it's how you find your pressure.
One thing that I'll say with that, and Bernardo has a really good philosophy for that. Bernardo Faria, he uses a lot of the over-under pass and some of these passes where he talks about pressure and uses that term cook. If you guys did that term seminar with him in Chicago, or if you've done any of his DVDs or anything, and he talks about he uses the term cooking people in that position, kind of keeping them there. Look, it's okay to fail at your pressure when you train. That's the reality of it. You should be failing in the gym. You should be trying things 1,000 times. It's the only way. I think sometimes people, they try stuff, it doesn't work, and they go, it's not for me. Maybe. Sometimes that's a good assessment. You know what I mean? If you're trying to do something real fancy and agile and you're not, that's maybe a better assessment. But a lot of times I think when you're passing, if you're not finding the pressure that you want, you've identified already the problem, right? So that's the best thing that you can do. You're like, man, in that position, I don't have good pressure there. You should try to cook people in those positions. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of times, and this is, and I'm not accusing anybody in particular, whoever asked the question, I'm just saying if I try to pass or guard so fast because I'm concerned, it's like, I got to pass because I got to pass. It's like in my head I have this concept of I got to pass. The idea of cooking the person and keeping them in pressure there is that you have it in a position when you can almost pass when you want, but you don't have to, and they can't do anything about it. And there's two things to that. One, you kind of break your partner there. You do. You kind of break your opponent, So the other thing is that I've seen very high-level guys. I had matches that stick out in my head, watching Bernardo do it to people, watching Lucas do it to people, where they're in positions where you're like, why isn't he passed yet? And you understand, and then eventually you see them make an adjustment, and they're looking for that adjustment, and they make it, and then they pass, and it's like, boom. You know what I mean? And they knew if they passed without that adjustment, that they may not succeed, right? It's a game of percentages, and we want every technique we do to be, obviously, the highest percentage of success. And if it's 50-50 and we take a shot at it, there's 50% chance it doesn't work. If we can make an adjustment and make that 75-25, it's already better, right? If we make two adjustments, and now it's 90% that it's going to succeed. And I only know that by staying in those positions and either failing. Like if you can cook somebody and they can't move, you're winning, right? You don't have to pass. Eventually, yes. If you're a competitor and you need your points, yes, you have to pass. But if you're training and I can put you somewhere and kind of keep you there and you're like, oh, this is awful, and we kind of start giggling about it, right? But I know, I'm like, I got you in a place where you can't really fight back, okay? So my next movement's going to be much easier. But sometimes the problem is we skip those moments. It's like instead of going to the position where I have all the pressure and cooking you, I just try to pass, and it becomes a scramble. And then I don't know why I fail. So it is something to think about if you're and pressure exists across every pass. Okay? I think sometimes people are like, oh, pressure passing. I'm like, pressure exists in every pass, it's just different, right? Toriano, there's pressure. It's pressure in different places with different footwork. But at the end of the day, if there was no pressure there, you would be able to move on the bottom. Some do rely more on speed or footwork, but ultimately there's always some pressure when you pass. I think pressure passing has kind of caught on more because it's a little slower and more methodical, especially for people that are maybe, again, in the Masters divisions and stuff. Bernardo always jokes about his game being really good for older people because they can do it and not have to be faster or hard. But the flip side of that is I think that exploring that pressure really allows you to figure out that base, that balance, that pressure, that idea that you can keep going from that position, but you can also stop. And so if you stop there and they can fight back, then you know that your pressure has to be better. If you don't stop there and you just try to pass and they scramble, we don't know if the pressure was good or not because we never really made it through that spot. We sometimes, like I said, we pass by parts of the pass. So, philosophically, that may be tough to juggle right away, but that is the tough part of training sometimes. I hope that answers the question. I wish there was like a clear cut and dry, like, man, you could just put your foot here. It's different for everybody. A couple of inches on a body makes a difference as to the hip position and things like that.
Well, and how you apply your pressure, I think sometimes one of the things people don't understand early on in jiu-jitsu is exactly what pressure means. And probably a good way to have someone understand what pressure is, if I take my body weight and I lay across Mark all my weight and it's distributed, how hard is this heavy?
Yeah, like in my lungs, I feel that, right? Like that's pressure, versus.
But wait a minute, is it as heavy as if I take my same body weight and I isolate it to one spot and I go to like knee on belt?
Right. Worse,
Way worse.
Yeah.
So, same body weight applied two different ways. One is a broad, stretched out, the other one, which is still heavy, but when I take it and isolate it to one area.
That's the thing. When she's passing at my hips, she's focusing all that weight really into that shoulder that's down and staying tight. So all of her weight is going to one point.
1 point.
And it's tough to find that in the beginning. I wish, man, look, if pressure was easy, everybody would be good at jiu-jitsu, or at least at guard passing. If pressure was easy, and I don't mean that in the wrong way, it's like you're constantly searching. One of my favorite things is searching for pressure. It's like finding new ways to make pressure, finding ways to make my pressure better. I think that's absolutely, it's like an addiction for me. Because
figuring out how you can move your pressure just a little bit on the same pass and change the percentage outcome of that pass.
Yeah.
Or on a different size person. How do I shift that pressure just a little bit to make it more effective on that body type? It's a never-ending game. It doesn't just go. You don't just magically figure it out and then.
And I mean, I think I always am honest with everybody. I was not a good guard passer until I got my black belt. I was a good guard player. I look at most of the tournaments I lost. It was because I couldn't pass guard. Right, I was really successful. I did brown belt Pan Ams. I went out, pulled guard in my first few matches. Swept, won those matches, was in control. And the third match, the guy pulled guard on me right away and had a really good lapel feed and everything. And I realized that I wasn't good. And he swept me early on and was able to play a game that didn't allow me to sweep him back. And it made me come back and work on a lot of things. He played it from a really good stacking position, which was really, he couldn't pass, but he didn't have to because he was winning. And so it was one of those things where I was like, man, I'm not good at passing guard. And that was brown belt, and I got my black belt. I'm like, I better get good at passing guard. And it's not that, I'm sure like I'm better than some at passing guard, even at purple and brown belt. But man, I tell you what, like that was one of those things where I realized more and more how important some of those details are. So, for me now guard passing is actually one of my favorite things. I would have told you probably then it was one of my least favorite things. I did not like passing guard. I love playing the guard. I don't know. I love passing guard now. I think it's like my new addiction. So I think it's awesome. And pressure, like I said, I'm addicted to pressure. I think it's cool. So right on.
More questions?
No more questions.
I'm good with that. Hey, that was good. Okay, that was a long class. But that's all right. I hope that helps you guys. I really hope it does. I know that's just kind of, it's one idea, right? So it's one concept, but it is a concept. It's not just, they showed a hip staple pass. We showed two different ways to do it, two distinctly different controls, and kind of how those relate. In the end of the day, we did the same technique, but it was a different technique, right? get a different way to open the guard, a different way to pass, even though it was the same, using that hip staple and creating that. And so it's one of those things that just kind of reminds you that, you know, your body style is going to dictate. Your opponent's going to dictate. Like, a lot of things are going to dictate the adjustments you have to make or the style that you use. And so as long as you keep those gears turning in your head and you keep advancing yourself, you know, you're gonna continue to make progress. And remember, it doesn't have to happen overnight. So.
We did get some thank yous and miss yous as well.
Miss you guys always. And this is tough for us, guys. It really is. I say that all the time, every time we do one of these things, but it's tough for us. I miss all you guys. I can't wait to have a bunch of people back on this mat. We're gonna get there. And don't listen to all that fear mongering, guys. I know it's, look, that thing's real and it's out there, and there's people that are really struggling, and it's tough. But the reality is we're going to get past this. This is not going to be some game changer for the human race. If anything, it's going to teach us how to be better human beings. And one thing I'll say, because I feel like a lot of times, we were talking about it yesterday, is like people being rude to each other out there. Do be kind to each other. Everybody's in a different situation, and I think that there's a lot of people right now that are acting like, you know, they deserve better or this or that. Like, we're struggling too. Our gym's closed down. We're not able to do the one thing we love, which is jiu-jitsu. It's terrifying for us. That's my perspective, right? I'm not an elderly person in a hospital, but I also understand that they have life and death situations going on out there. And so just try to treat everybody well, you know, support everybody you can, and, you know, don't be rude to people. I've been seeing way too much of that lately, and it's strange to me because I know they're going a little stir crazy, right? We're going to get past it. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be that person that everybody remembers as, you know, being awful when this was going on. So just try to love each other, guys. We're going to make it through it. It's going to be awesome. We'll be back here training before you know it. Be back doing tournaments before you know it. We're going to set big goals for next year. All right, guys? All right. Os.